Welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. Recently, I had 2 back-to-back speaking gigs in Atlanta, and one of them got canceled. I've been looking a lot this year at the media groups that run a lot of these shows, and it just fascinates me how badly some of them are run versus the ones who are well-oiled machines. It's something anyone speaking at conference shows has to learn. A friend of mine was supposed to speak at the event that got canceled, so her observations were well worth consideration. Sarah Lippincott is the Director of Marketing and Digital at Tigercomm, a PR agency focused on the energy sector. And on this episode, we'll discuss canceled conferences versus better organized ones, what some people get out of conferences, a podcasting presentation, and whether everyone needs to podcast, the energy sector in clean tech, 7 important factors in your next digital campaign, a new pair of shark shoes, tigers, and a lot more. So let's tune into a Tigercomm marketer with a tiger of a shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. All right, Sarah, welcome to A Shark's Perspective. If you would, tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Sure, thanks for having me. So I work at Tigercomm. I'm the Director of Digital Marketing there, and I worked in the creative field in graphic design, publishing, as well as agency. So I'm at my at a second agency here. I've been at Tigercomm for 5 years now.
Did you ever work brand before, or has it all been agency world in your life?
So I worked for a newspaper publisher, so that was in-house marketing and operations. There, actually, the owner of the newspaper, he ran 7 organizations, and I took over the
7 publications?
7 organizations. And so I took over the running of the operations and the day-to-day management of the newspaper, which was one of 7 that he was running. Yeah. So
we finally got a chance to meet at Digital Summit's, one of their smaller shows they do in Atlanta, because that's where you're based, and we're doing it here. It's the Everything Content and Social Show. And tell me what you thought about the show in general.
It was good. We had some good speakers. I got to enjoy your presentation.
Hello. You're welcome.
Obviously the best part of my day. That presentation was on podcasting, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Well, one of the things I like about their shows is they do so many shows throughout the country, but with these smaller shows, like this one's one day, 1 track of content, and another room is 1 track of social. They've done it with Everything Content and Email, where they do an all-day session on content and every day an all-day session on email. So it gives you a chance to experience what you really want to focus on. And what I love is that they bring it to local markets like Atlanta, which is a huge major market that doesn't get serviced with a huge amount of marketing conferences. Obviously, they have the much bigger Digital Summit show, which I've been to here, that I think gets close to 2,500 to 3,000 in the hallway just across. But it's really great that it's something done later in the year that gives you a chance to get into this. So when you start looking at conferences, whether it's when you lived in DC or when you were here, how do you sort of start breaking out as somebody working at an agency, which conferences you're going to pick and go to?
So I'm really looking at who the speakers are and then what the topics of those sessions are going to be. And if I feel like they're going to be able to add value in the current problem set that I'm working on at the time.
And obviously I was the big draw here.
Yeah.
I brought in ones of people to the show. So.
Yeah, and this is my second Digital Summit conference, but my first in Atlanta, like you mentioned before. I was in DC, so I attended the one there.
Well, they do a great job with experience. I mean, even at the smaller shows, it gives just a great place to network and get to know people. And I think something that's a benefit to the smaller shows as opposed to the massive shows where you kind of disappear into the crowd. This gives you a chance to really kind of network with a lot of people like I've done. I think more people come up and talk to me at these kind of shows than necessarily do at the bigger ones where I'm speaking to, say, 500 people plus. They're almost seems like they're more apprehensive to come up and talk to somebody and just have a conversation.
It's a little bit more intimate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what else about the conference, though, did you like of the speakers you heard today?
A lot of it is, I find it's the motivational aspect of it, too. So yeah, you're here to learn, but you're also, sometimes you just need to be reminded, get reignited and re-excited about the stuff that you're doing and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, we get caught up because we're doing it day to day to day, and sometimes you need to be motivated as much as you just need to learn. And so many of the conferences, a lot of them want to bring in people to bring in actionable content, which we all want to leave, but sometimes that's also full of how to inspire yourself to go do something. So when you listen to it, what sort of resonates with you? And that's such a great reminder, because so many people fail to really think about that. Sometimes we just want to be inspired by our day-to-day work, but when you hear things in here, what's inspiring you to sort of take action on what you're doing in your job?
Yeah, I would say it's twofold. One is their energy and feeding off of that and their passion, and then the other, I would say, is thinking about problem sets that you're on and thinking, you know what, I know that that's the thing that we should be doing, and it's a great reminder, and I need to go back and really, focus on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. So what did you get out of my session? Was there anything that was able to help you think about podcasting any differently?
Yeah, so we don't do a ton of podcasting per se. We join podcasts.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily have our own podcast. Previous agency I worked at, ZComm, did a lot of broadcast and audio, but
well, you're focused in the energy sector, right? You're representing clients who are in the energy sector.
Correct. So we have there are thought leaders in podcasting within the energy sector. Nico Johnson is one of them, but we're clean tech, clean energy, so solar, wind, energy storage companies, primarily B2B sectors, and the technical aspects of the podcasts, are actionable and we're able to implement. But for the broader spectrum, I see, and I think other people see, all of these influencers going on their social media channels saying everybody needs to podcast, everybody needs to be making content for every channel, slicing and dicing things up for podcasts, for YouTube, for Facebook, TikTok, and I think
is there a big energy presence on TikTok?
No, there's not that I'm aware of. So I think one of the things that I appreciated about it is that you're not out there telling everybody, oh, just go do it.
Oh, no.
Because there is a big commitment. If you want to actually do something, do it right, and do the things that make sense for your brand and for the goals that your business wants to achieve.
Yeah, it's so important, especially to look at the strategy first, and everybody jumps in the water well before. I find people rush into it way too much, and it just becomes content shock that nobody listens to, as happens so often, especially with blog content, because Lord knows we don't need yet another blog and we don't need another podcast, but everybody jumps into it wondering whether or not it'll actually help their customer, or just did they think they decided to get into it because they thought they should. I mean, one of my favorite slides is that Jeff Goldblum reference from Jurassic Park. And he talks about it, your scientists knew that they could, they just didn't stop to think if they should. And it's something I wish all content marketers would talk about a little bit more. I think one thing that's really important as well is you got to make sure you wear the right kind of shoes when presenting on stage, like these.
Well, you have the best shoes.
Yeah, my Shark Vans, these are new, are pretty good. And a friend of mine, KJ, told me I had to get them. Carla Joe, thank you. So
it was a good call.
It was a good call.
I'm a big fan of testing.
Yeah.
So if you are in a place where you're not sure, it's okay to test different social media channels, but you've got to make sure that it makes sense for your company and the goals that you want to achieve. And then you've got to make sure that you're looking at the data and analyzing it to make sure that it's the right fit and you're getting the right results.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I'll give you another example too. If you had to look at this event, which has a few hundred people, versus Digital Summit in Atlanta, which has a few thousand, which do you prefer?
Which do I prefer? Well, Digital Summit, the larger one, I haven't been to the one here in Atlanta. I went to the one up in DC. And I believe was there. So I kind of am a little bit partial to that that event just because of the thought leadership that was there.
You get more topics in the bigger shows. I mean, you think about like Content Marketing World, which has, 4,000 plus, and some of the other shows that are big. I mean, South by Southwest, they become more arenas, and it gets to, you're part of a larger event, but are you really getting a lot from it? And sometimes they can just get too big. That's one of the things I like about this kind of blend of show. So I'll set up the way we kind of met as well. As you reached out to me on LinkedIn because we were both supposed to speak at another conference, and I had somebody ask me if I wanted to speak, similar way that you did, because they saw we were speakers. And so we were both going to speak at an event run by a group. I won't say the group, but I'd love to. But very, very poorly planned. And I think what happened was the show got canceled. Not once, but twice. They postponed it the first time, canceled/postponed, moved it out. We're supposed to speak again tomorrow, which was part 2 of my trip to Atlanta, and the show got canceled at the last minute because they failed to market it well, which is not good for a marketing conference group to not be able to market a marketing conference. But, it just shows the level of sophistication with shows like Digital Summit or DigiMarCon or Content Marketing World or any of these bigger series of events, just how important it is for a speaker to have confidence in the conference marketing group to actually be able to put on a show.
Yeah.
So the show got canceled, but you were going to speak about the 7 most important factors in your next digital campaign. So what was that presentation about? Kind of give us an idea of what the 7 factors are to you.
Sure. So obviously, starting with number 1 is making sure that your program supports company goals. We briefly touched on this earlier. Identifying the best channels to utilize for your company and to achieve your goals. Brands don't have opinions, but people do. So really starting to talk about how important it is to have spokespeople, not just brand content. And then utilizing word of mouth on digital, which has been coming up a lot out of the inbound conferences, and utilizing case studies and testimonials and things like that. And then 3 more. So marketing to people. So just a reminder that targeting is important, but also trust and authenticity. And actually, that's something I appreciated out of your podcast today, was that you came
presentation.
Your podcast presentation was that you were really authentic and real about who should and shouldn't be doing podcasting. But I think a lot of times,
look, if I'll go up on stage and talk about my problems with ADD, OCD, and depression, it's authentic.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing is, we're all real people, but also who we're talking to are real people, and we get lost in data. We get lost in trying to achieve our goals, and a lot of times the emails read like you're forgetting that there's politeness. You're forgetting,
especially in the B2B space.
I
mean, they forget. They think that they're talking brand to brand and not Johnny to Susie or whatever it is.
Especially, and it's so important. There are social norms that happen when you interact one-on-one that people forget about when they get on social. I mean, trolls are the worst offenders of this, but brands do things like that too, where they're, mass marketing, emails, spamming people with messages, and that's not, you would never do that to a person one-on-one. So The last two is repurposing and contextualizing for the channel, and then measure and refine and building an agile campaign. So those were my 7.
So what's your most important out of that lucky 7?
Oh, it's got to be the first one. Company goals. It's the most.
We should focus on that.
Yeah, who'd have thought? Well, so here's the thing about that, though. It's so obvious, but it also gets lost. So a lot of people start talking about, you get in the horse race of you want to be the best on Twitter, you want to be the best on LinkedIn, you want to be the best on everything. But does being the best across the board on everything get you to achieve your goal? And typically for most companies, your goal is profit, risk reduction, or revenue. And if it's not helping you with any of those 3 goals, then you should be thinking about how you're investing.
Well, and one thing you brought up that sparked another thought for me is that so often we get into a channel specific strategy.
Yeah.
The end customer doesn't have a channel mentality only. All this messaging, I brought this up earlier. I said the confused buyer always says no.
Right.
You can confuse them easily if you go down that Twitter strategy is one thing, your Facebook strategy is something else, your Instagram strategy is something completely different. People aren't peeling back the many layers that you think they are. And I think especially they get misaligned too much in that messaging. And that's one of the reasons why I keep bringing that up. So for you, though, with somebody who's working with B2B, you're in the B2B space,
Mm-hmm.
You're working with the energy sector, who is your customer? Who do you think of as your customer,
Yeah,
rather?
so you'd be surprised that this actually, it can vary. So we've got developers, and there's EPCs, and there's so different customers along the pipeline. But it does actually depend on what company I'm working for, and who their personas are that they're marketing to.
Well, do you think of your customer, though, as the company that you're servicing? If you're helping a company with that messaging, or is it the end customer who lives at 123 Main Street?
Yeah.
Or Johnny or Susie who are sitting at that business that another business is selling to?
Yeah. No, it's always the customer of your customer's customer is your customer.
Yeah, that's a challenge, but it's one that I find too many people ignore. They think of they're providing the best service for their customer, and their customer is their agency's customer, which is that brand. Well, that brand is responsible to a customer.
Yeah.
Whether it's a business, another business, or it's an end customer that lives in a home somewhere, an apartment or whatever, and they're the ones consuming the product. And I think too often part of the problem is that we get so lost in that brand messaging, brand to brand speak, as opposed to human to human speak, and that's a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also depends on, there are agencies that you go to for execution and you own the strategy, and there are agencies you go to who have a strategic mind and are going to advise and recommend and are not going to be just like yes sir, yes ma'am type people. And I would really caution companies about hiring the yes sir, yes ma'am agencies that are just going to do whatever you say, because you need that conversation about what will actually work for the customers in order to be successful.
So what excites you most about your role in the agency world working for energy sector clients today?
It's problem solving, problem set challenges. We've helped companies with problem sets like protesters and crisis comms, but also with marketing and selling. And when we start on a project with a company and we're sitting at the table, we bring in all the stakeholders, we bring in the CEO, we bring in the company marketing communications teams, and oftentimes we'll pull in sales teams if it's sales related. And we get really deep on problem sets and challenges and then help them overcome them. And that is absolutely the best part of it, is helping them achieve those goals.
When you look at the responsibility of an agency, where do you see other agencies failing to meet those kind of problem-solving goals for the clients? Because what I see and what I rail about a lot is that everybody's so focused on billable hours, they're so focused on having another brand logo, and they don't focus enough on solving those problems for customers.
So a lot of times what I'll see is people are brought in with very little to no experience that run these campaigns, or they are promising the sky and the moon and the stars and not giving the real authentic truth about what will work and what will not work. And so my advice is really look for somebody who's willing to be a strategic partner, and if during the sales process they're willing to give you some valuable feedback, that's a good sign. If they're just saying, you know what, we're going to be able to solve all of your problems, and it's going to be easy, and it's going to be this, beautiful, trip to Hawaii, then it should be a red flag of bullshit right there.
Yeah. So what problems does the energy sector run into more so than, you work in other forms of marketing and advertising. What are the unique things that you run into in the energy industry?
Yeah, so in the energy industry, we're uniquely technical, but it also needs to be something that can be communicated in a simple way. And it is, for better, unfortunately, it has been politicized, even when it's as simple as it's a technology, and there's lots of technologies out there, but this one, at least in the United States, has a political taste to it and a history that if you're not sensitive to it, you're not aware of it, you can get yourself in trouble.
Well, so everybody knows, at least no trees, none of the environment was harmed in recording this podcast. No plastics were thrown into the ocean, thank God, because that's one of my most important things I freak out about. So, you're on a shark's perspective,
Yep.
with a guy wearing a pair of shark shoes.
And a shark shirt.
And a shark shirt and some shark tattoos. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Oh, I'm fascinated by great whites.
Good choice.
But I'm also, terrified of them. So
yeah, well, you can go to the Georgia Aquarium here and see the whale sharks.
Oh, those
sandbar
are amazing.
Sharks. The whale sharks, you can find Dory.
Dory's friendly.
Yeah, Dory's friendly. So, Sarah, are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions you're going to be asked today?
Okay, let's do this.
All right, number 1. You're from D.C. area, now in Atlanta, Washington Redskins, or Atlanta Falcons?
Oh, you're going to be very disappointed because I don't follow sports.
Okay. Go with the one that would least offend the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm probably going to be good with that answer.
Yeah, so I've never been to a Falcons game.
Okay.
So is that the right answer?
That is the right answer.
Okay.
Because although they're okay, nobody really cares about the Falcons. Sorry, Atlanta. Number 2, PR or marketing?
PR or marketing? I think that
it's a very tough one for you.
Well, it is marketing. PR is important, but I really think it's an aspect of marketing. Marketing is a little bit more broad in the world of digital.
Good point. Number 3, you work for Tigercomm. So my question is, the Bengal tiger or the Sumatran tiger?
Bengal.
All right. Tiger shark was also acceptable.
Oh, tiger shark or tiger shark, yeah.
Number 4, DC traffic or Atlanta traffic?
So I did not drive in either. I always took the train in DC, but there's no train here, and I'm working virtual for Tigercomm. So.
Yeah, they got MARTA, so.
So I would say now, if we were talking about trains, I would go with DC.
Absolutely.
MARTA's a little slow. No offense, Atlanta.
Number 5, and the most important question you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Oh, we talked about this earlier. Now, if I can do cornbread with...
But you can't cook, so...
No, I can cook.
Sorry, anybody who's a vegetarian can't really cook. I don't care what
Okay,
magical
so
things you do.
I can cook a mean side, but no, I cannot cook meat. And
an amazing salad is still not turkey and dressing.
So I did share this earlier. I've been vegetarian for 18 years, hosting Thanksgiving at my house this year. Have no idea how to do meat. So it will be a honey baked ham Thanksgiving Day that my husband will get.
A tofurkey.
I have done tofurkey
oh my
before.
Gosh.
I know.
The show just went off a cliff. It did. So your answer is cornbread.
Cornbread with
tofurkey.
With broccoli and cheese, like we talked about earlier.
Nice. All right, Sarah, where can people find out more about you, find out more about your company, follow your thought leadership in the space, and more?
Yeah, so visit tigercomm.us to learn more about Tigercomm. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just look for Sarah Lippincott, and you can connect with me there.
All right, until another conference in Atlanta, we're out.
Sayonara.
So there was my conversation with Sarah Lippincott, the Director of Marketing and Digital at Tigercomm, a PR agency focused on the energy sector. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with her. First, I've had this happen to me before, including on this trip, and luckily I had a plan B, but others didn't necessarily have that. Bad conference organizers, well, they suck. Think about all the people that make plans to attend. Speakers get airfares and hotel rooms. Employees plan to take off work. It's embarrassing when a marketing media company cancels a show just days before the conference, and I've seen it happen to me and to plenty of other friends. Just make sure to hedge your bets and look for better organizations out there. Just because they're bigger doesn't make them necessarily better, but you can start to easily see why some of these do well and why others do not. And if you're a speaker, then get paid half up front. You can always leverage it with them if they do another show later, but still cover your bases. Second, Sarah brought up such a great point that I hear the opposite of too often. Every conference should push speakers to give more actionable content, and it should be that way. But she reminded me that we get caught up in the day-to-day so much that sometimes we really just want to be inspired about what we do. Sometimes you may not learn something new, but a speaker with a lot of energy can help energize you to do better, to do more with what you're doing in your day-to-day. And it's a fine line as a speaker for me or anyone else to be a part teacher, part student, part marketer, part practitioner, and part motivational speaker. Third, I love big shows. The energy is amazing, but the smaller shows with closer settings are the ones where most speakers get paid day in and day out. That intimacy makes it so much easier for most people in network, and you can get a lot out of them in future business also. I love the big shows, but don't discount the smaller ones too much. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you for the privilege of your time. Never worry about me canceling on you. Sharks don't do that. I'll be here ranting and raving about something else, so join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.